What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, May 3rd, 2021, start of a brand new week, start of a brand new month, actually. And we've got a lot to talk about today. It's been kind of a busy news day. So we're going to do news until I run out of news. Then we're going to open up the phone lines for comments, questions, and so forth. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. So let's get right on into it. I'm going to start with some of the domestic politics here. Alan Dershowitz has slammed the FBI for the raid on Rudy Giuliani's Manhattan apartment. He's declared it as unconstitutional, and he is volunteering to assist in Giuliani's defense from whatever it is that they're planning on trying to do to him. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton is out there trying to basically get a lot of media attention these days for some reason. And she's out there with this statement that she gives Joe Biden an A for effort for his first 100 days. Well, you know, we can all have a lot of effort. What really counts is he getting anything done for we, the American people? And at that point, I'd say I'd grade him at a D at that point. Hillary says that Joe Biden is less constrained than his predecessors. And he's saying because due to the Trump administration's legacy that he inherited. Speaking of Biden, Hunter Biden still owns a stake in a Chinese firm. And the Daily Caller News Foundation reported on this. Hunter Biden invested something like $400,000 in this Bohai Harvest RST Equity Investment Fund Management Company. And so he's still out there with his connections to China. And I realize he's not the president, he's only the president's son, but he is in a position to exert a tremendous amount of influence on his fraudulency on behalf of China. Over in Arizona, GOP leader Kelly Ward did a video. We've got it on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and she has blown the whistle that the Democratic Secretary of State of Arizona, Hobbs, is trying to sneak Democratic operatives from biased organizations into the Maricopa County audit. And it's been happening since late last week. These are very corrupt people. And as I've said on numerous occasions, there is nothing the Democrats will not do to subvert the audit and protect their election fraud. Up in Windham, New Hampshire, there is a huge fuss going on over there, where the Windham Board of Selectmen chose this voting machine company for the audit with a known history of liberal bias. They were accused in 2019 of downplaying security risks of voting machines, providing cover for untrustworthy companies, and one of their officers was working to try and get the Maricopa audit shut down earlier this month. So they're trying to get the fixes in, and frankly, they may come back and say the election was honest, but nobody's going to believe it, because looking at what the Democrats are doing is quite convincing. They've got something to hide. If the election was really honest, they wouldn't really have a problem with the Maricopa County audit going forward, or the one in Windham, New Hampshire, or anywhere else. They're fighting tooth and nail against these audits because they know they have something to hide. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, according to a report in Newsweek, is now urging recounts in Michigan and other swing states following the Maricopa County, Arizona audit. So we'll see what's going to happen there. And don't forget, early on, we were getting reports from those audit officials. They had found systemic fraud. So we'll see what happens down there. Over at the Department of Justice, a little bit of a double standard on display there. This is the Department of Justice that's hunting down a granny for walking into the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, and they've just announced they're going to seal the records of over 200 Black Lives Matter and Antifa criminals. And they're basically going to seal the records of everybody who was arrested during the riots last summer, which again communicates the idea that they may have been working for the political system all along. Meanwhile, a former leader of the Black Lives Matter movement in Iowa City, Mazen M. Muhammad Ali, was arrested Saturday for interfering in a homicide probe. And there was a fatal shooting during a suspected robbery at his Iowa residence in February, but he failed to call emergency services after the incident for quite a long interval, and he was also found to have lied to investigators about the shooting circumstances and provided false descriptions of people involved. So those Black Lives Matter leaders, very colorful characters, how shall I put that? All righty, America First Legal is seeking to pursue a lawsuit to stop the teaching of critical race theory. This is according to Stephen Miller, a former advisor to former President Donald Trump. And he says they're looking for plaintiffs willing to stand up and file suit on critical race theory. Miller encouraged federal workers who've been compelled to participate in critical race theory training to join the effort. The White House and Justice Department had no comment. And getting on back to what's happening with education, story coming on out of charliekirk.com, a memo has surfaced showing that a Missouri school instructed their teachers to hide the race-based curriculum from parents. And they were encouraged to come up with a phony curriculum to show to parents who inquired. They basically go on teaching their anti-racism, critical race theory curriculum. And so they're pushing that agenda. They're hiding it from the parents. And this is nothing new, because when Common Core was first introduced to the educational system, the teachers there were forbidden from showing that curriculum to parents either. Now, call me silly, but I think parents should have a say in just what their children are being taught in the schools that are funded from the parents' tax money. Another story, this one coming from the Gateway Pundit. A math teacher was relieved of his duties after he refused to indoctrinate students with critical race theory. This was at Grace Church School in New York City. And the teacher, Paul Rossi, actually recorded the principal of Grace Church School admitting that critical race theory demonizes white students just for being born and makes white kids feel less than for nothing that they are personally responsible for. Now, George Davison, the head of the school, denies the claims, but the tape does not lie. Okay, so anti-woke candidates opposed to critical race theory being taught in Dallas school won control of the district school board with nearly 70% of the vote during a bitterly contested election. So it looks like critical race theory is on the way out down there, and that's what people are going to have to do. Go and oust the current critical race theory supporting school boards and put something else in. All right, getting on into science and health, there is a new study out of the Salk Institute which is pointing at the coronavirus and vaccine spike protein, saying it plays an additional role in illnesses. And scientists have known for a while that the SARS-CoV-2's distinctive spike proteins help the virus infect its host by latching on to healthy cells. Now, this new study coming out of the Salk Institute shows they also play a key role in the disease itself. And that may explain why people who are getting these vaccines that contain the spike protein are coming down ill. This next one is very, very scary. It's from LifeSite News. Hundreds of cases of blindness are among the 19,916 reports of eye disorders to the World Health Organization's European Drug Monitoring Agency following the experimental COVID-19 vaccine. The nearly 20,000 eye disorders reported to Vigibase, which is a database of the World Health Organization maintained by the Uppsala Monitoring Center in Sweden, include 4,600 cases of eye pain, 3,800 cases of blurred vision, light intolerance in 1,800 cases, visual impairment in 1,600 people, eye swelling in 1,100, and what's called ocular hyporemia or red eyes in 788 people. So can you imagine being told you must get this vaccine and then it makes you blind or seriously reduces your eyesight? There's been another study coming out of Stanford University basically saying that the COVID virus is 1,000 times smaller than the holes in the face masks we are forced to wear. They say this is like throwing a ping pong ball through a 7.7 by 7 foot hole. And so the study was peer-reviewed by 67 scholars, doctors, scientists, and other studies to support the conclusions. It was posted on the National Center for Biological Information government website. And the upshot of the Stanford report is that COVID-19 can easily pass through any face mask. Like I say, it's like trying to stop mosquitoes with a chain link fence. Another story, this one coming out of nationalfile.com. There was this 15-year-old boy in Colorado who died of a heart attack 2 days after being injected with the Pfizer vaccine. He had no previous history of allergic reactions or medical problems at all. He's only 15. You know, he's at the peak of his health. And the 15-year-old boy was vaccinated with the Pfizer-BioNTech on April 18th. He began to experience adverse reactions to the vaccine on April 19th and died on the 20th, 2 days after vaccination. Story coming on out of leohoman.com. There is this prominent medical doctor who's got expertise in treating COVID-19, Dr. Peter McCullough. He's gone on the record saying that it appears the government is scrubbing unprecedented numbers of injection-related deaths. They don't want that to get on out there to the public. We may already be in 1976 swine flu territory. You remember, the vaccine was killing 50 times as many people as the virus was, and they had to call off the program, but only after a lot of people died, and the same thing may well be happening yet again. Story out of NBC, no less. Interesting that they're covering this. CVS and Walgreens have wasted more COVID vaccine doses than most states combined. And these two national pharmacy chains that were entrusted to inoculate people against COVID-19 account for the lion's share of wasted vaccine doses, according to government data obtained by Kaiser Health News. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recorded 182,000 wasted doses as of late March, 3 months into the country's effort to vaccinate the masses against the coronavirus. So a lot of wasting out there. By the way, there was another story regarding those ventilators that went into a landfill, and it turns out there wasn't anything wrong with them after all. It was simply decided that it was cheaper to just throw them away than to try and ship them to someplace where they might be needed. And that's why they went into the landfill still wrapped in the shrink wrap. They were never even opened. Down in Florida, and I'm beginning to like that state more and more, and I'm beginning to like Governor Ron DeSantis, they just passed a bill in a 76-40 vote that will fine any business or school $5,000 each time it requires a vaccine passport. It is now on Governor DeSantis' desk waiting for his signature. And we covered this story before, but it's worth mentioning again, particularly in light of the story we just had about scrubbing deaths from the public record. Attorney generals from 12 states are calling on the world's top social media networks to completely eradicate any negative claim about COVID-19 vaccines. And Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey have already implemented misinformation, quote-unquote, policies to remove any dissent against government lockdowns, mandatory masks, and the forceful vaccine push. However, the new COVID vaccines are so faulty and unsafe, vaccine injury and death claims are still spreading across social media faster than they can be deleted. The Democrats are planning to monitor you at home to make sure you're following all of the arbitrary dictates about COVID-19. There is a House resolution introduced by Illinois Democrat Representative Bobby Bush that would basically authorize constant government surveillance of individuals' residences. And the bill, oddly enough, is known as House Resolution 6666, which I guess is the next door neighbor to the beast. And you know that if they get this passed, and it's obviously a Fourth Amendment violation, it will be kept in place to surveil us in our homes for any one of a dozen made-up reasons why the government has to keep watch on all of us at all times. Now, during this whole COVID-19 pandemic hysteria, there have been a lot of companies and individuals selling these ultraviolet lights, which supposedly can kill viruses and bacteria, but you need to be very, very careful about the unit that you get, because if the ultraviolet light can directly intersect with your eyes, it can cause eye damage. And it can cause problems like cataracts. It can even cause skin cancer. So you need to make sure that the UV light you have is safe to use. Up in Canada, they've effectively declared a dictatorship or martial law, and Canadian law enforcement has been granted the use of any force necessary to stop churches from gathering. So, Christianity is now illegal, but, sin is being encouraged. What can I tell you? Up in Canada also, there was a gold and silver dealer, Steve Merrill. He's the owner of Sun City Silver and Gold Exchange in Kelowna, British Columbia, put up a sign banning masks and people who've been vaccinated from his silver and gold shop, and sales soared to $1 million. I guess his customers didn't want to be exposed to people who've been vaccinated and who could shed the virus. So good for him. Even Samuel Adams, the beer company, has hopped onto the propaganda wagon. They've got a new TV commercial out. Your cousin from Boston gets vaccinated. And so the actor playing the cousin from Boston is in line to get his vaccine. He's in a rush because he's double parked. After he gets the shot, he quickly finds himself at the bar enjoying Samuel Adams Boston Lager with beer, with his friends, rather. Michigan, Governor Whitmer has declared the entire state to be a vaccine prison camp. Whitmer says, that you either obey or you stay locked down forever. And she is saying that the gunpoint enforced lockdowns will not end until up to 70% of the state's adults surrender to the vaccination. Freedom is only granted by the Whitmer regime when certain vaccination milestones are achieved. That's the latest coercive tactic to get people to take this shot. You know, lock you down, put you in masks, and we'll let you have your freedom back after you get the shot. Hillary Clinton, again, trying to get a little bit of press out there, has declared that after the pandemic, Americans are ready for Biden's big, bold government programs. Well, he's out there with all of these programs that sound really good until you get to the question of how you're going to pay for them. You know, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there, and soon you're talking some real money. And he's out there just, you know, writing checks on the future American people, and he's going to bankrupt the nation. And it sort of reminds me a little bit when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came out with her Green New Deal idea, and it said it was going to cost about $10 trillion, and people said, how are you going to pay for it? And she said, we'll just pay for it. Okay, how? How are you going to pay? We'll just pay for it. Like, you know, no problem where the money is going to come from. Of course, we know where it's coming from. The Federal Reserve will create it out of thin air and then loan it to the government at interest. Getting on to international news here. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says that closing Guantanamo is certainly a goal for Biden. It was supposed to be a goal for Trump as well, so I wouldn't hold my breath. Blinken is also joining the Joint Chiefs Chairman in admitting that the U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan could lead to a Taliban takeover. Now, Hillary Clinton, again, unable to retire gracefully, is... that's right, I couldn't hear the music. Okay, well, we're just going to go through this break there. All right. Sorry about that. Anyway, Hillary Clinton is warning Biden he should expect huge consequences for his decision to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. The Taliban, or somebody pretending to be the Taliban, is stepping up attacks across the nation as the U.S. hands over a base. Now, Blinken has come out with a very odd comment saying that just because the U.S. is pulling troops out of Afghanistan doesn't mean we're actually leaving. And Blinken is saying there will continue to be a U.S. presence in Afghanistan even after the troop pullout is completed, because after all, somebody has to keep an eye on all those opium poppies. Okay. The Macron government in France has ignored the warning from French generals of a potential civil war over leftist and Islamic radicalization, and has declared these generals will be punished. And that's not going to make the problem go away. It means that Macron won't have to hear there's a problem, but that's really not a good way to govern. Story coming on out of Journal Neo. Israel and Iran tensions are spiraling into a direct confrontation, and it's talking about this possible return of the United States to a nuclear deal with Iran, and as a result, Tel Aviv has demonstrably intensified the actions of its intelligence services to undermine Tehran's nuclear program, damage not only the industry, but the Islamic Republic as a whole. And Israel is making no secret of their displeasure with Biden's desire to revive the nuclear agreement that Trump abandoned in 2018. On April 11th, Benjamin Netanyahu said that the fight against Iran and its satellites, as well as against Iran's armed buildup, is the enormous task of the Jewish state. Of course, you have to understand, if Israel provokes a war with Iran, the United States will be drawn into it. Out in the South China Sea, the United States has started deploying these new robot warships to hunt for Chinese ships in the South China Sea. My guess is that being the South China Sea, they will find some, but it really shows how far along autonomous weapons platforms have come. So these robot warships have no human crew on them whatsoever, and they sail around and conduct reconnaissance and report back to their command center as to what's going on. Meanwhile, a lot of the hawks here in the United States are sounding the alarm over China's newly commissioned nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine. Their concern is that it's armed with the country's most powerful submarine-launched ballistic missile, capable of hitting the U.S. mainland from right there off the coast of China. The Type 094A or Jin-class nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine was presented last Friday as part of the celebration to mark the 72nd anniversary of the People's Liberation Army Navy. And it was capable of firing the JL-3 or Julong SLBM with a range of over 6,200 miles. That is some serious, serious power. Biden is talking tough on China. And meanwhile, Beijing has replied back saying that the U.S. defense budget reflects a sick psychology. And I would tend to agree with that. We have so many problems in this country that need to be addressed, and they're being ignored, they're being neglected in order that all the money go into the military-industrial complex. And my theory is we've been living in a wartime economy for close to 10 years now. They just don't want to admit it. China says the United States has ramped up military activity near its coast under Biden. And the Chinese Defense Ministry spokesman Wu Qian said operations had increased by more than 20% for U.S. warships and 40% for military aircraft in waters claimed by Beijing. Another little article, this one actually making some common sense. This is from Global Research. And it says, you know, all that sending a flotilla bristling with weapons into the South China Sea can do is escalate tensions with China. And earlier today, actually last Monday, BBC on their Today program, they were partly on board the HMS Queen Elizabeth, Britain's new high-tech aircraft carrier. So they're out there with that thing. Story coming on out of Cuz Blue saying that China is taking pretty much full control over Hong Kong. The idea of a free Hong Kong appears to be dying. All the democracy protests were for naught. And so that unfortunately did not work on out. Another story here from the Gatestone Institute talking about how China is seeking dominance down in Antarctica. And the story is that Antarctica is surprisingly turning out to be a tremendous resource for rare earth materials, which are necessary components for equipment like combat aircraft, weapon systems, wind turbines, electric vehicles, iPhones, iPads, computers. They're available in different geographic locations but are difficult to process. Last year, China produced 90% of the world's rare earth materials. So in 1984, during China's first Antarctic expedition, personnel helped set up China's first Antarctic station. And they have continued to work there. And it looks like they want to start commercially exploiting Antarctica. But the Antarctic Treaty, which said it belongs to nobody, is still in force. And it's going to be a long while before it is modifiable. Okay, now we're going to take a break for commercials, and I can hear the music, and we'll be right back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and looking back at that story about the robotic ships patrolling the South China Sea, there's another article along the same line. This is from Forbes, no less, where the U.S. Navy destroyed a surface vessel, I presume a target, using a swarm of drones. And the strike was basically out there testing all of these unmanned systems that the military apparently are starting to rely on, because after all, most of our young people still don't know which restroom to use, let alone have what it takes to go up against the infantry of another country. So they identified the target with an unmanned surface vessel. And they had all of these unmanned aircraft and boats, and then the ship, the target itself, was actually destroyed with a Standard Missile 6 anti-ship missile from the guided missile destroyer USS John Finn. So maybe they're planning on fighting World War III without the kids. You know, that'd be a good idea. The Wake Island Avengers Squadron of the United States Marines F-35B fighter planes arrived in Britain last Wednesday to deploy with a British carrier strike force, based on the HMS Queen Elizabeth. The aircraft traveled 5,000 miles from Yuma, Arizona to Royal Air Force Lakeheath on England's eastern coast to conduct final training for a planned 28-week deployment aboard the aircraft carrier. Speaking about the F-35, story coming on out of Ars Technica, asking, is the F-35 officially a failure? Well, officially, it never will be admitted to be a failure. But they're talking about, Congress, for years now, Congress has authorized the Defense Department to purchase more F-35 aircraft than the services had actually requested. But that generosity appears to be coming to an end, and the Air Force is starting to look already for a clean sheet replacement. In other words, the F-35 is proving to be the boondoggle we all knew it was going to be. And so last February, the Air Force announced plans to buy a brand new aircraft to replace the F-16 Fighting Falcon. And so they're looking for a clean sheet fighter using lessons learned from the efforts behind the recently acquired T-7A Red Hawk trainer. And there may be some difficulty there because the Air Force was supposed to already have an F-16 replacement, the F-35. Okay. Story coming on out of Market Watch. China has cornered the market on antibiotics, and according to this opinion piece, the U.S. must rebuild its manufacturing capacity. And I wholeheartedly agree. One of the problems this nation faces, Trump tried to address it. He was correct on that. We need to revitalize manufacturing in this country to provide good-paying jobs for ordinary American citizens, not the illegal immigrants, but ordinary American citizens. And we've got to have products to sell. Otherwise, we are going to go bankrupt, and we're headed that way as a nation right now. Anyway, getting on back to the antibiotics, right now the United States has virtually no capacity to manufacture antibiotics, and that's because China currently controls roughly 90% of the global supply of inputs needed to make the generic antibiotics for bronchitis, pneumonia, pediatric ear infections, and life-threatening conditions such as sepsis. Okay. A lot of Chinese companies are now rushing to list on the U.S. exchanges. There's a huge surge. And when you're a Chinese company and you can list on U.S. exchanges with little to no recourse or consequences for committing fraud, why wouldn't you? And Chinese companies are looking at the way the economy is run in this country and the way in which corporations are being protected. And they're saying, hey, that's a sweet deal. And so they're rushing to be part of that sweet little deal. This is important news. Came out of Investment Watch blog and a couple of other sources. Russia has officially ditched the U.S. dollar in favor of the euro. And so the dollar, bit by bit, continues to lose its reserve currency status. Okay. Story coming on out of shtfplan.com. There is a mass exodus from the West Coast, primarily from the liberal areas. People are moving to more rural areas like Claire and I did. And up in Idaho, so many people are moving there, it's driving the home prices way, way up. And any house in the area that goes on the market is likely to spark a bidding war. And the median price of a home in the region has risen by a whopping 47% in the last year. That really is a bit of a boom, if not a bubble. One bank is sounding a warning over soaring food prices, saying that this could lead to social unrest. Yeah, it definitely could. And so basically, this is a problem since food is a large component of CPI baskets in Asia, and this large inflationary impulse in the region that houses more than half of the world's population should result in higher wage costs in the factory base of the world. And Jim Reed basically said what repeaters already know, namely that Bloomberg's agricultural spot index has risen by 76% year on year, noting that's the biggest annual rise in nearly a decade. And we're already seeing it here in Indiana. Food prices are going up and up. Story coming on out of Zero Hedge talking about how America has become a kleptocracy, and saying the sheer weight of the wealth inequality and power inequality is pulling the nation into disorder. Now, unfortunately, the U.S. Constitution doesn't address a small elite owning most of the nation's private wealth and using a sliver of that wealth to influence the federal government so that their wealth and political power increase in a self-reinforcing feedback. We have the finest government that money can buy, and money is definitely buying it. And they finish up with a quote from Bastiat: "When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it." And I can think of no better recent example than House Resolution 1, which seeks to legalize and institutionalize the means by which the Democrats stole last November's election. Story coming on out again from Zero Hedge talking about Biden's Go Big plan. That it seems to be its intention is to leave America's middle class addicted to government handouts and the Democratic Party. And I saw a statistic the other day that right now, on average, 34% of household income in America comes from the government. And so people are not going to stand up and criticize somebody who's sending the money. That seems to be working right now. So they're talking about guaranteed annual income. And how's this all going to be paid for? Well, they say they're going to raise taxes. Well, so in other words, they're giving you a bunch of money with one hand, and with the other hand, they're taking it back, plus accruing interest. Story out of Yahoo: a majority of Americans support measures favored by Biden to substantially redistribute U.S. wealth. This is according to an Ipsos poll for Reuters released last Thursday, including tax hikes on the wealthy and a higher minimum wage. The gist of this is that trickle-down economics has failed, Yeah, we're tired of being trickled on by the elites. Because there wasn't much trickle down. The elites got their wealth and they hung on to it. Okay. Red states are starting to fight back against the reset. And this is a story coming on out of Zero Hedge. It says, the past year I've been writing extensively about what I call the Great Conservative Migration, a shift in U.S. demographics not seen since the Great Depression. Approximately 8.9 million Americans have relocated since the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, according to the post office, and a large portion of those people are leaving the left-leaning blue states for the conservative red states in the West and South. And states like California, Illinois, New York, and New Jersey were at the top of the list of states people wanted to leave. Okay. There's yet another scam out. I mean, there are scams all over the place. The latest one is exploiting Amazon. There was this Florida woman named Linda Shepard, and she was bilked out of $2,000 after scammers called her up and said someone was attempting to gain access to her Amazon account. And again, the scammers are just all over the place, and nobody seems in the government to be that concerned about it. Down at the border, the Border Patrol in California has seen a 51% rise in illegal immigrants in April. And illegal crossings along the California-Mexico border exploded by 51% last month, taxing federal resources and leading to delays in the screening of legitimate travel, according to border officials. And over in Washington, D.C., his fraudulency is trying to lay the current border crisis on Donald Trump, saying that the outgoing Trump administration refused to cooperate and share critical information during the presidential transition period. And again, they're finally admitting there is a crisis down there, and now they're just looking for somebody to dump the blame on. Here's an interesting little story from the Daily Mail in Great Britain. There was a Texas rancher, John Sewell, was doing a TV interview with Fox News remotely from his ranch about the border crisis, saying he'd already caught 3 migrants at his ranch that day before breakfast, and right in the middle of the Fox interview, more migrants were seen crossing the property, being chased by federal agents. So it really is a mess down there. A little bit of good news for gun lovers. This is from Gizmodo. Amazingly enough, the normally highly liberal 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco ruled that posting plans for so-called ghost guns, homemade firearms, and firearms parts designed to route around gun regulations is technically legal. The ruling, which affirmed the Trump-era removal of these gun and gun parts from the State Department's munitions list, means the blueprints for these weapons can be sold for export without approval from the federal government. Ghost guns came under fire in 2018 when the Trump administration settled a lawsuit with 3D-printed gun maker Defense Distributed. The ruling stated these firearms weren't to be placed on the munitions list, essentially allowing their worldwide sale and export. And the 9th Circuit Court has affirmed that. And that's a real surprise given previous decisions by the 9th Court of Appeals. Okay. Over at Syracuse University, they're offering a course in the English department questioning whether higher education should stop teaching Shakespeare. And they're literally asking, should we learn Shakespeare? And they're going to discuss issues of race, empire, colonialism, and white supremacy in Shakespeare and the Academy. Again, I know that Merchant of Venice is already verboten all over the country. But there's a lot of really good ideas in Shakespeare. And it's just another case of trying to erase white culture from the United States of America. Meanwhile, down in San Diego, parents of students at the San Diego Unified School District received an email basically announcing that the nonprofit Gender Nation would be donating 2,000 LGBTQ inclusive books for elementary students. So kiddies can read about LGBTQ, but they can't read Shakespeare. How's that for you? Down in Florida, Governor DeSantis says he will sign the Fairness in Women's Sports bill banning trans athletes from competing against females. And out in California, Caitlyn Jenner, who was trying to run for governor, and this may have actually sunk her campaign, went public saying it isn't fair for women who are born as males to compete against women in sports. It's not fair. The sports have to be protected. And of course, there's been a huge howling backlash against that. Over in Wisconsin, Governor Tony Evers has signed a bill requiring Wisconsin middle and high school social studies classes to teach about the Holocaust. This makes Wisconsin join 17 other states that now require Holocaust education. And just how does this prepare students for high-paying jobs? That's what I want to know. Okay. Story coming on out of Investment Watch blog. They're saying 40% of Dallas school district seniors will not graduate. Apparently, they're having a problem with basic skills like reading and writing and math. They're doing very well in the indoctrination area, but they're really not meeting the standards for graduation. Story, this one is coming out of, we're going to take a break for commercials and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show. Over in Great Britain, a 71-year-old Christian pastor was arrested for making allegedly homophobic comments. What he actually said is, and this is from the Bible itself, marriage is between man and woman. He was handcuffed and thrown in jail for the night and then released without charge the following morning. Okay. A little bit of good news from Mars. The Ingenuity helicopter finally completed its 4th test flight, and the reason it couldn't take off goes back to that software error that they had earlier. And so they've apparently patched the patch on that one. And so it's had its 4th flight, and now NASA is starting to make serious plans for what they're going to do with the helicopter on Mars. And, go on out and do some real science. And that's going to be a really, really good idea. By the way, I was rather surprised to find out there was a gentleman who emigrated from Palestine. Who wound up on the JPL crew building that helicopter. And he tried to go back home to visit and was treated rather badly by the Israeli authorities. Okay. SpaceX, the Crew 1 members, the Crew 1 mission, returned safely to Earth. And it is now the longest mission duration for a crewed American spacecraft. The Crew Dragon capsule Resilience stayed in orbit 168 days before splashdown off the coast of Florida at 2:56 a.m. Eastern. And of course, this was the first nighttime splashdown for a U.S. crewed spacecraft since Apollo 8. So good work for them. Now, the bad news is China launched the core of their new space station into orbit, And the Long March 5B rocket, which weighs 21 tons, was supposed to re-enter the atmosphere in a predictable path and land in a known area. That part has not worked out. So it's up there in a decaying orbit. It's expected to come down within the next few days, and they don't know where it's going to happen. Obviously, much of the rocket will burn up during reentry, but there's a lot of heavy, solid components in there that could cause a lot of damage if it comes down over a population center. They're saying it's a risk to New York, Madrid, and Beijing. That's how far north the orbit is, and corresponding south latitude as well. It could even come down here in Indiana for all we know. Just after they got done fixing that last leak, there is a new dangerous chemical leak at the Hanford nuclear waste site in Washington State. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines, area code 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I called to talk to you about social media, big tech, but first, you mentioned something that had to do with the CPI, Consumer Price Index.
Yes.
And, of course, CPI isn't used to quantify inflation. It's used to hide it with their basket of goods.
Yes.
And at Shadow Stats right now, based upon how they used to measure it in 1990, inflation is running just over 6%. I don't know how, this is from March. And then, of course, from the way they used to count it from 1980 until they changed it in 1990, it's humming at over 10%. So, creating all this currency out of thin air does have an effect.
Yes,
anyway,
it does. Inevitably, it does. They're trying to hide it, but yes, it's having an effect.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, and see all this scamming that has to do with currency, interest rates and whatnot, and all these brokerage firms, that these hedge funds and all this crapola. It all has to do with inflation. If there's no inflation, they got nothing. They got nothing, and it's sad. But anyway, so social media, big tech, as you know, I've said a long time. I don't use a cell phone, never will, because if anybody's going to make any cash off of my data, it's going to be me.
Okay.
And that's not how it works with this stuff. Social media works the same way. The users' data gets monetized. It makes a bunch of people rich, such as Zuckerberg. Right, and that other fellow from Twitter, that freak show. And then they turn around and they use that cash that they made off of the user against them by obviously stripping them of their free speech, which is what's happening right now.
Yes.
Because social media is not social media; they're publishers, and that's a fact.
Yes.
And you have Bezos with his Amazon, Mike. I would starve to death before I would use Amazon. And I'm not kidding. I will never, ever, ever, ever use Amazon because that guy's rich enough as it is.
Yes.
And his employees should have health care as good as his. They should have a pension plan. They pay into it, right?
Yes.
And they should have a decent living wage because that guy is filthy rich off of that. And he doesn't care about his employees, and that's a fact. They can't even unionize, right?
Yes.
Oh well, we have to have. Do you remember that whole scam? Hey, Mike, he's saying these mail-in ballots are perfect. Yeah, they're great. Blah blah blah. But you can't have mail-in ballots for voting. To have a union in Amazon. Absolute hypocrisy with these clowns. Anyway, that's all I had to say, Mike. That's my rant.
All right, well, good rant. Thank you very much for the call, and we're going to switch to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hey, how you doing, Mike?
I'm doing fine.
Good. Any chance of that that Long March, whatever it is, that Chinese rocket falling on D.C.?
On where?
Ooh, that would be too bad. On Washington, D.C.,
Well,
certain
as
locations.
much chance as it is going to hit anywhere else, I would hate for it to fall in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of really cool museums there I want to see someday.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Anyhow, there's one thing about Rudy Giuliani and that raid to confiscate all his personal stuff, but they left, Hunter Biden's.
Yes.
They found out Hunter Biden's hard drive they didn't want it. Seems to me that this may coincide with the Arizona recount or the forensic recount. They may be looking just to grab everything he knows about the election and try to fabricate a defense there. That's the FBI for you.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking at. If they can nail him, yeah, that's a bonus. But I think they're just basically just going in there and grabbing everything he's got, all his knowledge on the election fraud. It's a criminal state. Is what we're dealing with. Yeah, Rudy has a ace in the hole. It's 9/11. He was told the buildings are going to come down. Yeah. So I don't know if he'd ever play that card. That's probably
No, he probably wants to go on living.
Yeah, he probably does. He does. Hey, did you catch Patrick Slattery's show earlier today?
No, I did not.
No? Okay. Well, Biden put out an executive order targeting people who assist the Russian government. And this is very loosely defined. You can find it on whitehouse.gov. Executive order on blocking property with respect to specific harmful foreign activities of the government of the Russian Federation. And it's just basically an open contract on anyone who they want to take down that they think helps Russia. And I'm not aware of it, that we're not at war with Russia, so I don't see where they even have the authority to do this. And the discerning authorities that will determine whether your property will be seized, your bank accounts locked, or what have you, is the Department of State and the Department of Treasury. There's no judge involved. There's no due process or anything.
Yeah.
And I think this is pretty damn dangerous. This is Iron Curtain style, dissident.
Yeah,
style,
it really sounds like it. I mean, they could construe simply talking about the inadvisability of war with Russia as somehow helping Russia, and that's going to have a chilling effect on peace activists.
Yeah, one of the, of course, they had if you help directly, indirectly, the government of the Russian Federation, A, malicious cyber-enabled activities, B, interference in the United States or other foreign government elections. What's interference? They said making ads on Facebook was interference in 2016. And, you have Ukraine and these other governments that Russia involves itself with. And then actions or policies that undermine democratic processes or institutions in the United States or abroad. Basically, anything Russia may do may be construed as malicious. And if you're doing business with Russia, if you're importing, exporting, if you're, on the other hand, if you're dealing with Israel, it's there is no constraints at all. It's just crazy. You may want to look up that executive order.
Yeah, I think that needs to be looked at. Because it sounds like they're painting with a really broad brush that can, hit a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I got there. Appreciate you taking the call.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Mary in Virginia. Hello, Mary. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. How are you?
I'm fine.
You're looking fine with your smile.
Okay.
Okay, inflation only hurts the ones on fixed income. You do know that, right?
No, I think it hurts pretty much everybody unless you can get your employer to give you raises, cost of living increases, and not all employers are willing to do that.
Well, then they go on the dole, right? And so forth, the people that aren't going on the dole. Because they're like, hell, I can make more doing this or that, right?
Okay, yes, that's one of the problems, with...
How are things in Indiana?
Say again?
How are things in Indiana?
Well, we got a big storm coming in tonight. They're warning about possible tornadoes here. They had some nasty tornadoes down in Atlanta, Georgia, and a couple of other places here. So Mother Earth is definitely on the rampage here in the United States.
Did that worry you more in Hawaii than Indiana?
Not really, but we actually did get tornadoes in Hawaii. We had one that ripped up a tree just down the street from where we were living. And we saw another one, a water spout come off the ocean on the shore out by Electric Bay. That was a little bit of a surprise. I grew up with Wizard of Oz, and tornadoes are something you get in Nebraska and Kansas.
Yeah. No joke. Yeah. Yeah. Well, life is good in Indiana, right?
Yeah, it is. Claire's having a really good time.
You go to the Indy 500?
No, that's the other end of the state. And I don't like crowds, and I'm probably not going to bother doing that.
No joke. Well, I'm glad you're doing well, son.
Well, thank you.
Love you.
I love you too. We're going to let you go and go to Steve in Manhattan. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
What's quite interesting is Theodore Herzl died at age 44, and 44 Orthodox Jews died on that day, awful day. It's just an awful situation. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
And also Bernie Madoff's birthday is on that day. Jerry Seinfeld's birthday is on that day. Andre Agassi's birthday is on that day. Pretty interesting.
Well, there's so many people there. The birthdays are going to line up sooner or later. I mean, Claire's birthday is this Sunday, and so is my younger brother's.
Yes, but you should know that gematria is real, and there's a conspiracy at the high levels of Illuminati involving the ruling elite and the Q people. So there's something going on.
Well, Q is full of a lot of misinformation. A lot of people think it's a disinformation operation.
Yeah. I mean, basically, so the problem is basically 44, 45, these numbers add up in gematria, maybe just coincidence. Some people think just coincidence the numbers line up in gematria. You can make any number appear.
Well, I know that numerology kind of went the same way as astrology and alchemy. And you told our producer you wanted to talk about the infrastructure.
Yeah, I did. What happened was the country is $30 trillion in debt, and how we're going to invest in this infrastructure project? It's not going. It usually comes back. How can we? Historically, we haven't got the money back in infrastructure projects. For example, in New York, there's huge corruption. It costs $1 billion a mile to build 1 mile subway in New York City.
Yes.
So they took from the 1970s to recently open the 2nd Avenue subway. It took them about 40, 50 years to open that subway line. The tunnels were already dug in the 70s. It took just 2 years ago to open those subway lines. It's crazy. So it's so expensive. In France, it's significantly cheaper to build infrastructure in the United States. And they're a socialist country. But in New York City, there's so much corruption, so much fraud. It just costs billions.
Well, it's hardly New York. I mean, out in Hawaii, they were putting in this light rail system, and it still wasn't finished when Claire and I left. I don't even know if it's finished and running yet, but that went hideously over budget, and they had to rebuild large sections of it because of bad planning. So, yeah, these things are badly managed. Anyway, Steve, going to let you go here. We got to switch to Miles in Maine. Hello, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael.
Aloha.
Michael, I gotta admit right here, I am part of the Claire Rivero conspiracy, and I want her to come back on Fridays.
Yeah, a lot of people do, but she's working on her music these days.
Well, God bless that. Yeah, I look forward to that too. What I was calling you about, this account in Arizona, is this a forensic count, or what is this being labeled?
You mean in Maricopa?
Yes.
They're calling it an audit, and they're checking not only the ballots, they're checking the voting machines themselves.
Well, you know what I think might be an interesting outlook there is if it were possible. If we're going to go back to that election anyway, I would have liked to have gone back to those primaries because I would have liked to have seen Bernie Sanders votes.
It's entirely possible the primaries were being rigged along with the main election itself. I mean, I thought Tulsi Gabbard would have done a lot better than she actually did. And, I mean, there's no reason the fraud is confined to the presidential election. It's probably happening all over the place. I mean, we have certain politicians that the public seems to loathe, and yet they keep winning re-election after re-election after re-election.
Yeah, I would like to, since they're going to open it up, I mean, it's the same year, go back to the primary, and let's see if that was a tune-up for what we got treated to in the fall.
There was definitely massive fraud in 2016. It just wasn't enough to keep Trump out of the White House.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the 2020, I think the primary was a tune-up for what was up, to come.
Oh, yeah.
Because they obviously had already missed 16 up because, they told everybody in the world that, Hillary Clinton, there's nothing in the world that can beat her.
Yeah.
She's 90%, and nobody can touch her. So, they didn't quite have the strings all fixed on the rigging machine, and I think maybe that primary could have been a tune-up. And as we all know, what the general election was, it was just absolutely disastrous, and should have been stopped, overturned, revoted, or just canceled out, period.
No,
but,
you're absolutely
anyway,
right.
Michael,
There's no reason to assume that the primary elections were honest and fair, when the general election was so obviously crooked.
Yeah, and since they're already going to be there, they're going to be digging everything out. I would love to see that primary and what that election was like and see where Bernie's... And, that's another thing, too. Well, how come none of these Bernie Sanders people, for the second straight time, there's credible evidence that he got a raw deal.
Yes.
Why are they not out here? I mean, why are not? I don't get it. Why are they not out there? Why wouldn't the Democratic Party themselves want to be out there on it and say, yeah, we got to look at this too?
Well,
so,
I think there's this idea that they all know fraud is going on, but it serves a higher purpose. We're transforming the country and making it safe for the LGBTQ people and drag queen story hour, and so that justifies cheating.
And that's what I think, too. I think they know. Those Democrats are terrified of any of these vote recounts.
Yes.
So with that, Michael, I'll let you go. Always having a great show, and great to hear you again today.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we're going to go to Mark in North Carolina. And, Mark, I'm probably going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I'd like to ask you, what did they say about Russia there? If we get into a war with them, people would be accused of being friendly to Russia or something like that?
No, the other caller said that Biden issued an executive order authorizing the government to literally strip the wealth from anybody who is giving assistance to the government of Russia, and there's no clear definition as to what that means, so it can be applied on an ad hoc basis.
Oh, all right. Well, it didn't surprise me with Biden. This guy's got to go, and that brings me back to you were talking about the recount, not the recount, a forensic audit there in Arizona.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, if that goes through, that's just going to really be a constitutional crisis, because I can't see how this country could, let this happen. And by the way, as an answer to what Miles was saying about Bernie Sanders, I was listening the other day to a show called The War Room, actually on my podcast while I was driving.
Yes.
And by Stephen K. Bannon and Raheem Hassan. And they had a Bernie supporter on there, okay?
Okay, Mark, I got to put you on hold. Mark, I got to put you on hold.
Okay.
Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking with Mark in North Carolina. We're talking about Russia. We're talking about, again, increasing signs of a push to propagandize the American people, to support war with Russia, and to silence those who question that propaganda. So, Mark, take it away.
Okay, getting back to the thing about the audit, the forensic audit.
Oh, yes.
That show, the War Room with Stephen K. Bannon had a Bernie Sanders supporter on there, a big-time supporter who's heavy into assisting with the audit. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, and he is, a lot of Sanders supporters know there was hanky-panky going on in those primaries. Getting back to Tulsi Gabbard, what happened with her is after she took out Kamala Harris there,
yes,
showed her up for what he was trending like crazy on all the social media. And I at the time, I believe I still was on. I still had Twitter. They hadn't suspended me yet, or kicked me off actually, because they suspended me for life. So she was trending like crazy all over the place, and then they cut her off. They cut everything off.
Yes, they did.
She didn't exist, and people started forgetting her. And she didn't have really the money to really launch the kind of campaign she would have needed to overcome that. This is election interference by Zuckerberg, by...
I agree. I agree.
Dorsey, rest of them, Google, YouTube. They can't... Hopefully they won't get away. Hopefully these people will go to jail before this is all over. These people are also behind the fact that people can't really find out just how terrible these vaccines are. They're finding out anyway.
Yes.
I know the signs now in my neighborhood, in my area, there's a supermarket before, that now you don't even need an appointment. You could just come in there and get your COVID-19 injection, So that means, in other words, they're not getting enough people. And now they're just desperately trying to get people. And I understand they're throwing away a lot of, excess vaccines that they can't use anymore. So they're having problems with that, even with their. But as far as the elections went, no, they succeeded there, especially in stifling Tulsi Gabbard and destroying Bernie Sanders' campaign. And then, of course, what they did to Trump in the general election. They can't get away with it. And I hope and pray, if we do find out the truth, and I think we very well might. I mean, people like us, we know the truth, but I'm talking about the general public finds out the truth. I don't know whether they can just kick Biden out right now, put Trump back in. I don't think they can do that. I think what they could do is kick Biden out and order, let's say the Supreme Court or something, order a general election, or even a military, and order a new election, like within 6 months, and have a caretaker government of both, nonpartisan, Republican and Democrat, or the military could come in like they did in Burma.
Yes.
Kick out the and kick him out, and then order a new election. Either way, I would be very happy if something like that happened, because we can't let this stand. This country is illegitimate.
Can't.
As long as
if we don't have honest elections, then we've lost control of this government.
When you talk about Russia, you talk about China, or any of these other countries, they're probably laughing at the United States right now. Okay?
Well, I think they're more concerned about, the U.S. government going completely rogue and having all those nuclear weapons.
Oh, yeah, that's true, especially when you get a demented old imposter with his fingers on the nuclear trigger. Yeah,
well, thank goodness for the two-man rule. That's all I can say.
Is there really a two-man rule? I don't know.
Yeah. My understanding is the president could order a nuclear strike in response to an attack, but it takes two people in national command authority to initiate an unprovoked nuclear strike.
Problem is, he's so crazy and so rotten that he may get to the point where Russia and China do hit us with the first strike, because just figuring the man is so incapable and so dangerous that they might hit us first. You know, anything is possible. This is pins and needles now. This is, we're talking like I said, if you watch the Terminator stuff, what triggered it there was machines that triggered it off, but it was between the United States and Russia.
Yes.
I mean, we've got enough weapons between the two of us to probably destroy the planet just between the two countries. And then what would most likely happen, Britain and France would get involved, China would get involved, Israel would probably try to nuke Iran, Pakistan might then nuke Israel, India would try then probably nuke Pakistan and vice versa. I mean, you're talking about planet destruction. That's what you're talking about. If that happens, all out nuclear war, and that's how dangerous this is. And to have this imposter sitting there, the recipient of a completely illegal election. I mean, Mike, I don't know, man. I've never seen anything like that in my lifetime.
No, I've never seen any. I've never seen the nation this bad in my entire life, and I've been around for a while now. Okay. Anyway, Mark. Yeah, Mark, I'm going to let you go. We got to take another break for commercial. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good day, Mike. Yeah, Michael, good day to you. Good afternoon. Listen, the last guy from Carolina, it seems like he's coming around to Trump a little bit. He's warming up to Trump. That's good news. He's warming up. I think he's really figured it out, what's going on. But here, Mike, here's the main thing that everybody, your callers, should be talking about today. And the show should be about this. It should be about immigration, Mike. It should be about immigration the whole week, the rest of this week. I'll tell you why, Mike. I don't know if you had a chance to see Jesse Waters Saturday night with Laura Logan. Did you happen to see that, Mike?
No idea. I did not. We've covered a lot of immigration news here on this show, but, and I agree with you, immigration is a major, major problem, but it's not the only one, and I don't want to focus on immigration to the exclusion of these other issues like election fraud and the economy.
Okay. I can understand that, Mike, but this is really important. Let me give a couple minutes on this.
Okay.
Jesse Waters had Laura Logan on as a special guest. They were talking about the Aztecs. When the Mexicans and Central Americans are not actually what they say they are. They're like from the culture of Aztec, okay?
Yes.
And what Jesse Waters was asking her, they were talking about beheadings. They were talking about, they have like the Grim Reaper on, they're getting all these people are coming in here have these tattoos of the Reaper, or whatever it is. Forgot the name of the saint. But Jesse Waters looks like he was ready to turn red when he was listening to Laura Logan explain what's really going on with this immigration situation, Mike. And it is mainly probably the biggest focus point we have to look at because, Mike, in the next elections coming up, it's going to be illegal votes that are going to turn these elections, these multiple millions of elections.
Well, I'm sure that illegal votes were a major factor in 2016 and 2020.
Well, I'm sure dead people voting was probably a major factor we don't even know about. But, Mike, getting back to what Laura Logan said to Jesse, this is worse than a cultural shock to this country. It is a shock. It's going to shock the core of the nation. The crime rate the cartels are pulling on the border, Mike, is shocking.
Yes.
You need to go back and archive it. Everybody is listening right now and wants to email you, Mike. They should archive Jesse Waters' show Saturday night with Laura Logan. Then they'll all be calling in, and they'll be going, oh, my goodness gracious, what is going on here? This is the most perplexing problem we're ever going to be facing in this country right now. Because, Mike, when I saw Jesse was like dazed and confused what she was telling him. The way he was like, it was a brief kind of a thing, but it was actually kind of long because she was explaining that they're not coming to compliment. They're going to come over and take over the place. They're not the cultural identity that they want to keep here, Mike. These cartels, the drugs pouring in here, the fentanyl, every other drugs that even coming in from China. Yeah, Mike, it is the biggest to me. The one it has to be.
Well,
the top
it's not
two
just
issues
the
in
immigrants
economy,
here. I
of
mean,
course.
if you, look, give me a second here. If you think about what's going on with our government, where they're defunding the police, they want to take away our guns. They're creating a society in which crime can run rampant, and that crime is the bottom of the drug money pyramid.
Yeah, Mike, you're right. But, Mike, you're not talking about this. You're not talking about the people who are being beheaded in this country, losing limbs, getting their legs, amputation. I mean, women are actually getting raped and their arms cut off. You saw what happened to the woman in New York, okay? They cut her arms off. The cops were actually following her. Her body was in the trunk. And then the lady, Laura Logan, was explaining this is going to be happening in massive scale if we don't stop this insanity. Because, Mike, and again, these people are all coming here for competition. They have to have jobs. They have to have clean water. They want food. They have to have Section 8 housing. Yeah, Mike, it is. That does affect the economy. It puts white Americans back in behind the 8 ball. So, Laura Logan was slamming it out of the park when she was telling Jesse what's going to be our future with this bumbling buffoon Biden, who's committing absolute treason with sanctuary cities, Mike. He should be absolutely put in a prison cell. Joe Biden, he's a president of the United States. I don't care if they come get me. What he's doing with sanctuary cities alone, Mike, like you've been saying about Title 8, is unconstitutional in our Constitution. Am I lying, Mike? Yes or no?
It's not so much the Constitution as it is Title 8 violations. And, we have a government that has no more respect for the Constitution, and they're not obeying their own laws. They've definitely gone rogue, and I'm beginning to understand why so many people are now talking about open revolution.
Well, Mike, exactly. And, Mike, let's look at California. You had a mayor there 2 years ago are tipping off the illegals that the feds are coming to get them.
Yes.
Which I believe there was 2,300 that they were ready to round up. And she's walking the street, Mike.
Yep.
In fact, I think she's still the mayor of Oakland. So, Mike, come on. And, as far as what you've been saying all along about voter fraud, you were telling Trump and his family if those dummies weren't listening 3 years ago this was going to happen, Mike.
Yes.
I remember listening to your show, you kept saying on and on. There's going to be voter fraud. Mike, you were right on the money.
I was.
For that because you're right on the money.
Yep.
And Donald Trump can't get somebody in his imbecile clique. He couldn't get somebody to hear your show and say, hey, man, this guy might be onto something. I mean, Mike, it's right. Look, all I want you to do, Mike, so you do talk about it this during the week, is please archive Jesse Waters' Saturday Night Show with Laura Logan.
Okay.
Please do that for me. I really think you're going to go, Tom's on to something here because that was probably one of the most actually it was the most explosive show Jesse Waters, what the Waters world ever did. For sure. Absolutely. Okay. Because the people who saw that, Mike, I believe are shocked to the core about the mutilations, the stuff that's going on. MS-13's off the charts. Mike, there's over 100,000 of them here in gangs in L.A. alone.
Oh, yeah. MS-13 is all across the country now. And, we have all these gangland killings over drug turf. And again, to me, there's an obvious pattern of defunding the police and disarming the American people to make a society in which crime can run rampant in order to fuel the drug trade.
Well, exactly, Mike. And I hope Peter from Los Angeles calls in, or Joe from California.
He's next on the list.
And maybe Joe can get Layla to call back in. Maybe I propose or whatever, and he can get her to call back in. She was a good call. So I hope she does call back in, But, Mike, I hope you really do stress the fact that, hey, you know what, Tom's right. I'm going to look at Jesse's show Saturday night with Laura Logan, and I think that you're really going to say, wow, this is something that's really heavy, something very heavy that's got to be dealt with publicly throughout the nation. It's got to be, Mike, because if not, we are going to become like Central America. We will become a third world rapidly. We will become a third world.
I think we're almost there. I mean, in terms of our culture and our society and the decadence that we're seeing in our schools for crying out loud. We're becoming a third world country. We're becoming as messed up as ancient Rome just before the collapse.
Absolutely. And, Miles is on to something with Bernie Sanders. They stole the election from Bernie.
Yes.
And Bernie is this guy's a full-blown socialist communist, Bernie Sanders. He's a Marxist, Mike.
Yes.
Bernie's a Marxist. He went on the honeymoon in Russia. So Miles was on to something there. But there again, the media, you don't hear a peep out of the media. All you hear is crickets. Nothing. It's all insane. It's insane what's happening. But, Mike, I hate to tell you, but my number one issue right now, other than the economy, which is part of it, is immigration. Absolutely. Yes. After seeing Laura Logan explain to me about the Aztec invasion, people better pay attention, and they better look at that, and they better start talking a lot more about it to their congressmen and everybody. Ron DeSantis here in the state of Florida is not allowing sanctuary cities. Any mayor that tries to pull it, they will arrest them. They already got the laws on the book, Mike. If a mayor in this state of Florida tries to pull any kind of sanctuary, they'll be arrested. They're breaking Title VIII.
Well, that's a good start.
Yes, it is. So, and he was really good on Laura Ingram's show yesterday with all the other governors. They have that lady, governor from Iowa, was very good, and got a lot of Nebraska governor. There are a lot of those great governors. So we need people like that in office. Otherwise, we're going to lose this country, Mike, rapidly. We're going to become Mexico. We're going to become a third world banana republic.
We're well on our way to both. I mean, we are losing our country. I mean, that was made abundantly clear last November. And it's I don't know what the ultimate aim of all of this is, other than this one planet, one mongrel race, idea. But, I'm against the idea of a global government simply by studying how corrupt our national government has become.
Absolutely. I tell you, Mike, I remember my prediction still stands. 8 more months, I say Camilla's going to take over within 8 months of the presidency.
I would not at all be surprised. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that Biden has lasted this long. Yep.
Well, it's going to be probably within 8 months period. Then he'll have something. He had a brain aneurysm or something. You'll see. We'll see. It's going to play out. Eventually, it will. So anyway, Mike, thanks for taking my call. I know you got other callers, but Mike, please look at the Jesse Waters interview with Laura Logan.
All right, I'll make a point of hunting that down after the radio show.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a great day, Mike.
All right, same to you. And we're going to switch to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Mike. You hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Mike? Oh, okay, good. Mike, I agree with everybody with what we're talking about with immigration and so on. But I would tell you that first let me say that there was something that I sent you today that I saw was a topic I originally wanted to call in about, and that's the intelligence agencies are coming up with another agency that will grade and inform the American people of which countries are interfering in our elections. Did you happen to see that?
It doesn't ring a bell, but I may have posted it, and I remember seeing something about a new agency being created.
Yeah, it's by the intelligence agencies, and what they're going to do is they're going to basically be a quote truth agency for who is interfering in the American quote democracy.
In other words, it's just another propaganda institute.
Yes, another way for them to get us into a war and to demonize whoever they want to demonize, which we've all been through it, through Desert Storm and Iraq and Afghanistan and everywhere. Anytime they want to go to war, they start demonizing. And now instead of having just an office of special plans that will be doing stuff every once in a while, it'll be a permanent entity. But and I want to point out, Mike, that in my theory of the way things work in the United States and really past the United States into most of Western Europe and North America, it's the biggest group, the most powerful, the most influential, you've heard me say it a million times, are the people who can print the money and never get audited. There's nothing that you cannot accomplish if you can print money and never be audited. And so they can use this new agency like they use the Office of Special Plans
to
get us into it. But to go back on Tom and everybody's talk about immigration, they're also the people who have been behind critical race theory and the Great Replacement. Not only are they behind the Great Replacement and critical race theory and pitting all the races against each other, so that they can, with the 1.7%, can rule the other 98.3. But that's the real problem. Tom's right about immigration. You're right about the economy, the hollowing out of the economy, all the things that are going on, critical race theory, Antifa, the rioting, all that stuff. It all comes back to the fact that we're ruled by a group of people who can print money, without being audited, accountable to nobody.
Yes.
And their loyalty is to themselves and a foreign government. And it's even the elections. When you look at, as Mark was talking about, with Zuckerberg and all these other guys interfering in the election and the cheating on the elections, as Tom did too, they were behind that too. The media and the banks, they're the same people. It's this Zog government that controls everything that we see and we read and we hear. Everything. They control our elections. They own, as we've talked about before, the top donors in the Democratic Party, the top donors in the Republican Party. They own it all. And they're behind everything that we're talking about here. From critical race theory to the immigration, the Great Replacement, to the thievery of the elections, to the genociding of basically of the whites, everything. Even go down to the opioid crisis and the Sattler, the Sattler family, another tribesman, another Zog outlet to Jeffrey Epstein and blackmailing all of our people.
Yes.
I mean, what they can't bribe, they'll blackmail. It's all pervasive. At any rate, so I agree with what both Mark said and Tom said. But above and beyond all that, if we only had control of our own government, if we only had control of our own media, and if we only had control of our own foreign policy, a lot of things would be different.
Yeah, but we've lost control of our government. Last November proved that.
I agree. But who's behind that? Who are the biggest donors and who's the media that we're in bed with them all? Along with the intelligence agencies, by the way, that they've managed to purchase them too. So, I mean, come on. I mean, behind every one of these huge, huge systemic threatening problems, it's just one group and the fact that they can print money. That's the one underlying line thread that you can draw through all of this.
Yes.
And they have it in for us, and they have it in for whites and blacks and everybody else. They want to control it all. And you know what? They do.
Well, I think at some point there's going to be a pushback, and I would hate to see the rise of a new Nazi party, but you need to understand what was going on in Germany that led to the German people just deciding to go along with the Nazis to try and fix all the problems they had, like their private central bank, control of their media, and again, their decadence. Apparently, one of the world's first transgender clinics opened in Germany in 1919, and it was burned to the ground by the Hitler Youth. Okay, Peter. Peter, gotta let you go. Got a commercial break here. Back with more phone calls after these few words. And welcome back to our show here. Last segment on this Monday program, and we're going to go to Marco in Alabama. Hello, Marco. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, good evening, Michael. First and foremost, you guys have heard of Al Qaeda.
Yes.
Our new enemy is Al Con Queso, baby. And all that, man. I mean, to put it lightly, I agree. Shout out to Tom in Florida. I love your governor. I really hope that Ivy follows suit. in Alabama. We need to, strengthen and unify, or else we don't have a country left. I'm sorry. I mean, I am a front office manager for a major hotel chain.
Okay.
And to sit here and talk about, the what is it? The hatred towards whites. The critical race theory thing?
Yes.
I sit in on interviews, on job interviews. Now, this is the truth, you guys. Listen to this. They are going for the less qualified candidate, less qualified to meet their quotas and all that stuff. I mean, I have sat in, and the guys that they're talking to can't even articulate sentences. Have no training, dude, in any of our software networks or anything like that, or anything that how our front office, dude, is being run. And they are giving these people jobs, dude, just because of the color of their skin. And, I mean, I watched a guy, dude, that was, I wanted to speak up and say, we need to hire this person. This is the best person for our job. I'm sorry, that he is Caucasian and things like that. And I was looked at like, what the hell's your problem, man? And this may have been, the moment, dude, where I might have to start looking for, a new job and whatnot. But this is the truth of the matter. The Great Reset is here.
Yes.
It says it on the UN's website. 660 million migrants from North Africa and the Middle East, dude, to come here, let alone, what's going on, with our border. The border is just the battling ram. And the real replacement migration is coming. We are 15 years behind what's happening in Germany, Great Britain, all of these countries. The very fact, dude, that this is going on, and you can see this around you, is enough, dude, to cause the alarm. It is enough, dude, to make you sit here and think, we don't want another South Africa, Zimbabwe situation in this country. And you better do something about it, because in all reality, you can't change, the pigmentation, dude, of your skin. We are hated. We are these people are being taught to hate us.
Yes.
In UN stronghold migration camps. And this is the reality, people. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
That's what they're teaching kids in our schools is to hate white people.
All he talks about is immigration and all that stuff. Well, when we are going to be voted out of existence. We were already voted out of existence in the 2020 election.
Yes.
Now they're just coming to clean everything up. This is the sobering reality.
I'm afraid you're right. And, in one way, I'm kind of glad I'm getting on in years, because I'm not looking forward to what the future is going to bring for this country. You're right about the allusions to South Africa and Zimbabwe. It does seem like it's going to happen here. Okay, Marco, got to let you go. There's the music. It's time for the show to end, and I apologize to the caller waiting on hold. Try and call back tomorrow. We'll get you on the air. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It is very urgent at this time. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.